And boys and girls, welcome to BenchART. I'm for Classic, and for today, and this was highly requested during 6 months, Yakuza Like a Dragon, a game developed by Ryoga Gatuka Studio, and it is using the Dragon engine, so it's the developers behind Yakuza that obviously releases a new Yakuza game. So for the settings, I do recommend pretty much the same settings as Yakuza 6, since it runs pretty much the same way. So it's 1080p using the high presets, so it's pretty much everything on high except for the shadows and the geometry. And by using these settings, my experience was overall above 60 frames per second during the gameplay moments and even combat moments. Although during some cutscenes or some special attacks, you can expect your frame rate to go under 60 frames per second, but I didn't thought it was important since median settings there is really a big drop. If you go to 1440p, even with maximum settings, my experience was above 30, but during some cutscenes it might drop, so you might go better with the high presets, in my opinion. Alright, so this was my results that I had without recording, with a little bit of traversal throughout the city and kicking in some fights in order to get this level of performance. Like I did told you, cutscenes might be more demanding than this, but I don't think they are usually that important as the gameplay moments when it comes to frame rate. So looking to the requirements, these guys recommend a Ryzen 5 from the first generation, 8 gigs of RAM, and the GTX 1060 with 3 GB or an AMD RX 580 with 4 GB of VRAM. This game doesn't consume too much VRAM, so don't be scared by the fact that our GTX 1650 Super only have 4 GB, because at 1080p using the high preset my VRAM was pretty much around 2 GB of VRAM, so no issue whatsoever with the VRAM. So it's entirely GPU bound game, and the performance it is limited by the GPU. So if you have a better GPU, obviously you will have better frame rates, and you can achieve better frame rates also with better settings. So that's pretty much the performance that you can expect for this game. So if you want 60 frames per second most of the time, the high preset it is what I do recommend. You can go ultra, but the game will go under 60 frames per second more often. Alright, if you go with median settings and apply resolution scaling at 1080p, there is a huge difference in visual quality, and despite it will grant you a performance above 60 frames per second all the time, the reality it is that the downgrade it is quite big, so I don't recommend you. My recommendation it is really to stick up with high, and like I said, even if the game drops below 60, it's doing some special attacks. I need to remind you that Yakuza Like a Dragon it is no longer a beat 'em up game where you kind of beat all the people in the streets in real time. Now it is a turn-based game for the disappointment of many hardcore fans. So frame rate is not important. You could play this at 30 if you want, because it is not important anymore. 60 frames per second is not important anymore for this game, since they created this type of JRPG combat system. So it means that you can play this game at 30 frames per second just fine, but I like the animations and the way that everything it is smooth with 60, so that's why I prefer to play with high. Now let's talk a little bit about the game. Regarding the game, I barely scratched the surface of any Yakuza game. And one of the things that I can say for Yakuza Like a Dragon is that a lot of people grew a little bit disappointed with the fact that Yakuza Like a Dragon it is now a turn-based game. So Judgment, the new spin-off from Yakuza developed by the same developers of the Yakuza series, the Ryoga Gatuka, decided to move on the real-time combat Yakuza style to the Judgment game, and decided to transform the Yakuza into a turn-based combat. So many people were simply disappointed by this decision, and they couldn't saw themselves playing this game. But for many people that did give a chance to this game, they were completely jaw-dropped, because the identity of Yakuza, according to many users, are still in here and better than ever. So there is so much more stuff to do. It's like the fact that they left the focus in real-time combat and triggered the JRPG stuff, led them to have more time to focus in other stuff that they thought it would be interesting to complete a little bit the game with tasks and mini games like the usual stuff that Yakuza have. So what I mean is the story, people say that it is amazing, it's one of the best in the series. The Ichiban, the new character, they say that it is great, it is super great, it's a very lightweight character, so it was a good move according to them too. And the combat system, despite many people were kind of, I'm not sure if I'm going to like it, the thing is, in the reality, people end up letting it through, alright, and end up enjoying the combat. But for many people that wasn't really going to enjoy this type of combat, some of the people still play the game and they say that the game is simply a masterpiece inside the Yakuza series despite the combat did change. So yeah, it depends on how much you will tolerate this type of combat if you don't enjoy it, but for most of the people that play the game, they say that it's clearly one of the best in the series, alright, despite its combat change. So I think that's all that I want to talk about the gameplay itself. The game is still expensive even after 6 months of its release, or even more. So it's still $59.99 on Steam, so I decided to subscribe to Xbox Game Pass in order to get access to the game. The game was added to Xbox Game Pass during the E3, so it was really the announcement that I was waiting before testing out this game. I was really waiting this for getting in the Game Pass so I could try it. So here it is, guys, the video with the performance of the game. Hope you keep enjoying the rest of the gameplay, which in this case will be mostly cutscenes, and I do hope to see you soon. Goodbye.
やっぱりあんた強えな。だが勝ったな俺だ。約束通り財布はもらってくぜ。頼む。それだけは勘弁してくれ。お願いだ。なんだよ、ちゃんと金持ってんじゃねえかよ。お前、鼻から踏み倒すつもりだったんだろ。何やってんすか、兄貴。何って、なんか余計なもん入ってたからよ。余計なもんって、これ金？グレートさんよ。約束通り財布はいただいてくぜ。はい。よし、行くぞ、見て。ちょっと、兄貴。いねえな。おい、姉ちゃん。いや、荒川雅人さんは。
本日はまだお見えになっておりませんが。
そうっすか。すいませんでした、若。しのぎが立て込んでて。
場所をわきまえろ。
すいません。大丈夫ですか、若。
大丈夫だ。
もうすぐ着きますんで。
いや、まだ行くな。そこに入る。
はい。 なんすかそれ。
海外から取り寄せた最新のエフェドリンだ。
エフェ？
一種のドーピング薬だ。交感神経に興奮を与えることで弱った体でも健康体と同じように動かすことができる。効果は短時間だが即効性がある。
ちょっとなんでそんなもん持ってんすか？
今日は俺の女の誕生日だ。こんな体で恥かかせらんねえだろ。
いやでもそれヤバい薬なんじゃ。
日本じゃ認可が下りてねえってだけの話だ。ここに打て。
俺無理っすよ。やめましょうよ若。こんなの危険ですって。
育児のねえやつだな。
若
行くぞ。
若